and welcome to everyone. It's lovely to see many familiar faces. Lots of you have folks, many from the area we're in Washington, where the Center for Mindful Living is located, but many others joining us from other places. And please feel free to kind of share where you're from if you'd like to, in renaming yourself or in the chat. So yeah, welcome. My name is Hugh Byrne, and I'm a teacher here with Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW. And I think what I'd like to kind of reflect on today, maybe before I get into reflecting, just to say, if you're new to this class, these sessions we hold on Sundays, typically what we do is, after welcoming people, I'll share some reflections about the teachings and the practices, and particularly how we can bring them wisely and compassionately into our lives. Because if they are to mean anything, they need to really change our lives for the better. And that's really the promise of these practices of mindfulness and loving kindness and compassion and equanimity that we cultivate, that they'd actually transform our lives, that we live with greater happiness, with more ease, with more well-being, more freely in the world. And because of the time that we're living in, which is I often say it's an unprecedented time in a number of ways. It's unprecedented, just the way we're meeting is a reflection of the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic where we can't be together in the way that we were 9 months ago or a year ago, and our lives are all, in different ways, are all transformed by this worldwide pandemic that we're in the middle of, and that we're in an extremely intense phase of. All 50 states and the District of Columbia are all on the upswing with the cases rising, and we're really at a time when drastic action really needs to be taken, but collectively and individually in our lives, so that we really do bring things down again and save lives. I mean, potentially save tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of lives. So it's a very unusual time that we're living in, and a challenging time we're living in. And I feel, in terms of my own practice and in terms of my own life, what I do and feel called to do is to relate these teachings and practices very much to our lives and to the times we're living in. And I've mentioned the times, the pandemic that we're living through. We're also living in a time of a real uprising, that demanding fundamental changes in relation to racial justice, to the historic oppression that's been going on for 400 years of people of color, of African Americans, and how we're going to address that issue and all the issues around racial justice and economic justice as well. That's not kind of outside of the purview of these practices. These practices are about living wisely and living compassionately, and it's about how we live together in the world. And we've also, here. There may be one or two coming, joining us from outside of the US, but pretty much everyone else has been, over these recent weeks, in the midst of this other pandemic, this other intense situation of the elections that we've gone through, and how difficult and how painful that process has been. It's been, in some ways, it's had joyous expressions. You know, more people voting than at any time since, I believe, I don't know the final numbers yet, but it's 1900, so over a century since we've had so many people voting. People care deeply, and as an agency within the Department of Homeland Security came out this last few days ago and said, these have been the most secure elections in American history. So in that sense, that's something to really celebrate. What's much more problematical is that there are two very different visions about what happened. You know, it's almost two contradictory and mutually contradictory views of what happened. And what I want to do today is I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about it from the standpoint of truth, of what is true. And I want to talk about the Buddha's teachings about truth and about speech and communication. But I don't want to do that in the abstract of like, oh, there are these teachings about the Four Noble Truths and these teachings about wise speech, wise communication, but to really relate those teachings to the time that we're in the middle of, that we're in the midst of right now. And I want to do it in a way that is very much grounded in the intention of not being divisive, because even to kind of wade into this area is to very easily risk kind of getting into divisions. And so I don't want to do that. And I don't want to do it from a standpoint of politics, you know, of like politics about views. These views are those views. So it's very much my intention not to do that. But I also want to be as honest and as truthful as I can be, just in the naming without blaming, if you like, naming what I see happening. Because I think we need to do that. We need to confront honestly where we are, the times we're living in, and how we can engage wisely, compassionately, and how these teachings and practices that are, I find, hugely beneficial in my own life, how they can support us in these times. You know, if it were merely just like, well, you know, this is what the Buddha had to say about truth and wise speech, then, you know, that could be helpful. But I think it's more helpful if we actually grapple with the situation that we're living in, where there's a great deal of dismissal of truth. There's a great deal of what can only be called dishonesty, and a dishonesty that is actually kind of turned into a weapon, you know, a weapon of division. And again, I'm wanting to say that not as a us and them, but rather a kind of naming of something. So I was thinking about talking about truth today in the last few days, because we are at a painful and difficult, and I think a dangerous time in our society, where, you know, millions of people are looking at what's going on in one way, and then millions of people are looking at what's going on in a completely different way. They're looking at it through a very, very different lens. And so I wanted to talk about how the Buddha's teachings can provide wisdom and can provide guidance regarding truth, and how we can speak and communicate in ways that are true, that are kind, that actually lead to breaking down divisions rather than building up divisions. You know, that's very much the intention of what I have to share, and the intention very much of the teachings. And I was thinking about this talk and what I wanted to share when I was on a walk yesterday with Rebecca, my partner. We're just walking along. They closed the road through the park on the weekends, and we're walking along. Quite a lot of people walking. Lovely day. And a woman just came up to us out of the blue, and she said, "Have you heard the news this morning?" And my heart went, you know, oh, what's he done now? my mind went to, you know, are we at war? You know, has there been a coup? And she said, and she said, no, the elections. She said, I've heard people are trying to steal the election. And she mentioned the statement by the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who joked, quote in quotes, about getting ready for the second Trump administration, you know, for, after he was, quote, re-elected. And it was unusual. I mean, people don't tend to just walk up to me who I don't know walking in the street or in the park and say, what's going on in politics? You know, I don't know, maybe we look like we might be open-minded or something. And I shared, I said, no, there actually isn't cheating. And I didn't want to do it in a polemical way. I kind of say, no, this is, you know, get into a one-sided view. I said, no, the networks and the major news sources have all agreed that the Biden and Harris have won the election, and they've called the election. Our allies in Europe, leaders in the UK and France, and you know, leaders in Canada, and I think yesterday China, have all called the president-elect and congratulated Biden on his victory. The Pope called, and you know, it's with his congratulations. And everyone, all in agreement that that Biden is the president-elect and will be the next president. And so I encouraged her. I said, you know, just you know, don't believe one source of information. Read as broadly as you can and listen as broadly as you can, and take your information in from as many different sources as you can, and get as close as you can to an accurate kind of view of what's actually happening. And so it was a pleasant conversation. It wasn't a conflictual one. And she certainly wasn't somebody who I thought had completely kind of bought into, you know, conspiracy theories or QAnon or deep state theories. She was, you know, seemed to be, you know, puzzled. She was not born here. She had a strong, I thought, Middle East accent, and but was curious and uncertain. And so she didn't seem completely convinced of what I had to share, but she seemed open to that point of view. So it maybe opened up. I thought, well, maybe I'll look into this more closely. So it was interesting having that experience. And I know, you know, many people out there have this view, and we had a big kind of relatively some thousands of people came to Washington, DC yesterday to protest what they called a stolen election. And so I'm just reflecting on what I know as near as it's possible for me to know anything. And I know that that's not actually what happened. And yet it's very painful and it's very sad that almost half the people in the country believe or are open to the belief that something happened that was fraudulent, that was a stolen election. How damaging that is I want to share one statistic that many of you are familiar with. And again, I don't want to share this from a point of view of, the bad other out there, but from a standpoint of just reflection, that the Washington Post, as many of you know, maybe most people know, has since January 2017 been following, has been counting the number of false statements, untruths, call them lies, coming from the President of the United States. And they counted up to August of this year. They counted their number at the end of August came to 22,000 false statements. You could say 22,000 lies, 22,247 by August 27th. And they say that in the first year, there were 6 of these every day, an average of 6 a day. In 2018, the number went up to an average of 16 a day and up to 22 a day in 2019. And up to the August, it was an average of 27 false statements, inaccurate statements, lies every day. So I say that again, not as like blame, but to reflect on what is the cost, what is the price that we pay collectively as a society and as a culture. If every day the leader of the country, the leader of the free world averages 27 false statements or lies every day, in the run-up to the election, it went up to an average of 50 a day and was set to pass 25,000 by election day. They weren't able, the problem was they weren't able to they didn't have enough staff to keep up with the lies, with the false statements, the misleading, inaccurate statements. And so they're still catching up. But they estimated that 25,000 lies or misleading statements from the leader of the country. What does that do in terms of the reality that the shared reality that we're living in right now? That some 40 to 45% of people are taking in that information every day as though it were accurate information, as though it were true. And that one or more channels of information are kind of choosing to put that out there as the truth. What does it do in terms of our ability to talk to each other, to live together in a way that's, that really is a society where we see things in the same way? What is the cost to us collectively as a society of almost half the people, or at least a substantial proportion of that, almost half the people, actually believing that our democratic institutions are not democratic, that their vote is not really likely to be counted, that their views are not likely to be respected and reflected in the political system? What is the price we pay for that? What is the cost of that? And so I raise all that as a question, not to take sides in a battle, but to name that as a starting point. And what I want to do from here on out is to kind of step back from that and to ask, to kind of explore the Buddha's teachings about truth and about how fundamental truth is to our whole, to living a happy, a free life individually, and to do so collectively in society. So I want to look at truth from the standpoint of the Buddha's teachings. And truth is at the core of these teachings. You know, what is the central teaching of the Buddha? You know, if I ask you that question, the teaching to which all of the other teachings return, you know, probably almost everyone would say, well, it's the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, the teachings about suffering and the end of suffering. These four truths, which the Buddha called four truths, four noble truths. I'll say a little bit about noble in a minute, but noble truths, four truths, he didn't call them four thoughts or four possibilities or four ideas. He called them truths. And these four truths about suffering and the end of suffering are really the deepest truths about life that we can come to understand. They're the deepest truths because they're liberating to us. Now, for us to know, for example, that 2 and 2 make 4 is not a liberating truth. Or to even know that the earth goes around the sun. It might be illuminating if you were a child. Oh, is that true? It might be really interesting, but it's not, it doesn't free the heart, let's say. You know, other kind of truths that we could say, factual truths, don't actually free us. But understanding and experiencing the truth that suffering exists and that our suffering comes from our relationship to our experience, to clinging, that our suffering, that our unhappiness, any unhappiness and unsatisfactoriness in life comes from clinging, comes from holding on to views or wanting things to be a particular way, or wanting to get rid of things that we don't like. That is the cause of suffering, that clinging is the cause of suffering. And seeing that and letting go of clinging allows us to free ourselves from suffering. That understanding, those truths, including to the path of mindfulness and compassion and loving kindness and equanimity, the path we take to let go of clinging, leads us to suffering. This is why these truths are truths that free us. They're the deepest truths that we can experience. They're not just ideas or understandings. They're truths that can actually change our lives in profound ways. The truths that can take us from suffering to freedom. You know, they can take us from suffering to freedom in the blink of an eye, just in the seeing. But often it's over time, seeing things clearly, letting go, seeing things more clearly, letting go more, you know, and ultimately to the potential for letting go completely and experiencing complete freedom from suffering. They're called noble truths because they ennoble us. They allow us to live a noble life, a life of nobility of the heart, which was the only kind of nobility that the Buddha found meaningful. You know, to be a lord or an important person, you know, an emir or whatever, important political figure, that was kind of meaningless. The Buddha himself, you know, the Siddhartha Gautama who became a Buddha, was born into such a life, a noble life, you know, talked about as being a prince. That is really insignificant. What is much more significant is nobility of the heart, you know, a noble heart, and a heart that has found freedom from suffering. And this is what these teachings help us to do, is find freedom from suffering. They're not truths to be believed. It's not like, oh, I believe in the first noble truth of suffering. I believe in the second noble truth of the origin of suffering being clinging. I believe in the third noble truth, the freedom from suffering that comes from letting go of clinging. I believe in the fourth noble truth of the path leading to the end of suffering. It's not to be believed, it's to be practiced. These truths are to be practiced, to be explored in our own lives. And in that exploring, we can experience the liberation, the freedom from suffering. We have to see for ourselves in this way. These are truths that free us. They're, if you like, ways of seeing our experience. They're lenses through which we can look at our experience. And you say, okay, I'm really anxious about us living in this period between the elections and the inauguration. All sorts of things can happen. And easily my mind can go into kind of, well, this bad thing can happen and that bad thing can happen. And I can go into to fear, I can go into anxiety, worry. But if I use this framework of, oh, yeah, if I'm caught up in worry, then I'm clinging to some idea. I'm clinging to a view that bad things are going to happen. I'm clinging to a view of the future. What about if I can see the possibility of letting go of that view and letting go of this, what I can't really know anyway, and it doesn't serve me to cling to, it's as though if I keep worrying and worrying and worrying, I'm going to sort things out or I'm going to know more. And in fact, it actually gets us more caught up in knots. So if I can use that framework of, okay, I'm clinging, I'm holding here, can I let go? Can I just come back to this moment and feel the tension in my body and notice the thoughts in my mind? Breathe maybe more or more deeply, come back and just let go of kind of, okay, can I just be here now? And in that moment, I can find some freedom. And if I can keep doing that and I can keep cultivating this present moment awareness with compassion, then I can really untangle myself from the suffering that I was caught up in. So I can use these teachings as a framework, a way of seeing my experience and our collective experience that actually leads to suffering. So truth is really at the very, very center of the Buddhist teachings, the Buddha's teachings. Everything comes back to these truths. It's also one of what are called the refuges, the three refuges, sometimes called the three jewels. These are really reliable resources for us in our lives. We think we can hold on to our possessions or our loved ones or our job or our health, or different things in life. But when we look at them, we find none of these last. Everything comes to an end. Everything is impermanent. But there are some things that are reliable in life. What is reliable is or are the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha's awakening, the capacity each one of us has to wake up. That's reliable. We can actually rely on that as a teaching, as an understanding, that I can know there is the possibility. I might not always feel confident about it, but there's the possibility to wake up and find freedom in this life. That's the first reliable, kind of the reliable resource. When everything else comes and goes, I can come back to this. I can come back to the truth of the possibility of awakening, what's called the refuge of the Buddha, of wakening up, the capacity to wake up. I'll jump to the third one, because I'll come back to the second one. The third one is we can take refuge in community, just as we're in community here together. We can know that we're not alone. Our suffering, when we're suffering, we experience this sense of separation, of isolation, of aloneness. But when we come back and realize that this suffering I'm feeling, you know, if I'm anxious about what's going to happen over the next 66 days, I can say, oh, actually, that's not my suffering. That's something that we're all sharing together. We're all uncertain. We all don't know. We're all in some way sharing the anxiety, the uncertainty, the unknown about this. And if I can kind of give this back to the collectivity, to the community, I can experience much greater freedom. I say, okay, I've got my own life. I still care, and I can still be engaged and want to be engaged in what can I do about things, you know? Do I need to write a letter to my congressman? Do I need to go down and stand outside of the White House, depending on the circumstances? What's wise action? I'm still caring, but I'm not getting caught up. I'm not getting wrapped up in like a pretzel in this fear and anxiety or anger or whatever it is. And this is what the gift of Sangha, of community, gives us. This recognizing that we're not alone, that this is our collective, if you like, it's our collective karma that we're living through. There are causes and conditions that lead and led to where we are now as a society and as a world, as we face climate change. Our actions and the actions of our parents and our grandparents going back, you know, in different ways, brought us to the place that we are now. And that's really what we're living. We're living with the karma. We're living with the results of what went before. And the future will be defined by how we live in this moment. And the more we can be present and compassionate and mindful now, the more we're creating, we're sowing the seeds for future happiness and well-being. And if we act unwisely from greed or hatred or delusion in this moment, we're creating the seeds of future unhappiness. So remembering that, recognizing that, knowing that we can come back to this resource, this refuge in community. And coming back to the second of these refuges is that we can take refuge in the Dharma. Taking refuge in the Dharma is to take refuge in these teachings and practices of freedom, of freeing the heart, freeing the mind. But at a deeper level, like kind of on a kind of even a larger level, taking refuge in the Dharma is taking refuge in the truth, taking refuge in what we can know through our direct experience, through looking at the world through the lens of the Buddha's teachings, of the Four Noble Truths, through these practices, that I can see things as they really are, not through my own habits or my own conditioning, but I can actually see things clearly. I can see the deepest truths of life. And that's really what taking refuge in the Dharma is. So these three jewels, or these three refuges, are also they're about community, they're about waking up, but they're also about truth. They're about coming back to the truth. And that's at the essence of all these teachings. Everything in these teachings is about coming back to the truth, not coming back to wishful thinking of how we might like things to be, or about, you know, believing some story, people are telling us about how things are. But what can I really know in the deepest way? And if we come down, so that's kind of the bigger picture of the Buddha's teachings about truth. We come down to a kind of the next level, as it were, to the Buddha's teachings about wise speech. Our speech is so fundamental to living together, isn't it? Not just even living together, it's about living with ourselves. How do I talk to myself? Do I talk to myself with kindness, or do I talk to myself as though I'm, you know, carrying a big stick? You know, oh, there I go again. Oh, I'm such a loser. Oh, I'm always screwing up. You know, all those voices in my head. Our speech actually relates to how we relate to ourselves as well as how we relate to others, and particularly how we engage in the world. our speech? How do we talk to each other? What do we put in writing? What are the gestures? Are our gestures kind, or are they angry, or are they unkind? What are we cultivating in our speech, in our communication? And the Buddha gave 4 central teachings of, he kind of put them in negative terms of what should we avoid in our speech? What should we abstain from? And there were 4 kinds of speech he said we should abstain from. He said, abstain from false speech. He said, never lie, not for your own benefit, not for anybody else's benefit. Now that's a high bar, because lying, it can have a lot of connotations. Is it a lie when somebody buys, your partner or a good friend buys an article of clothing that you think, wow, why did you buy that? What do you think of my new coat? What do you think of my shirt? You might kind of say something that's, oh yeah. I think another color might work better for you. You might have ways of avoiding, but it's particularly talking about not telling untruths, not saying things are other than they are, not bearing false witness against anybody, whether for your own benefit or for anybody else's. So abstaining from false speech. The second is to abstain from slanderous speech, speech that is intended to create enmity, to create division, dividing one person from another person, or one group from another. I was thinking about this, and some of you maybe remember the Shakespeare's classic Othello, where Iago, told Othello lies about Othello's wife Desdemona, that she'd been unfaithful to him, slandering her in order to, create hostility and anger in Othello, and for Iago's own good, not for anybody's good, but to create harm. We can see it around us, slanderous speech, telling false things about other people. We see it a lot in the political world. Oh, they did that. They take money from the oil companies, or they're going to cut your social security, or whatever it is. And sometimes if it's false, then it can be, and it's untrue, and it's intended to divide. This is slanderous speech, and we have to avoid this speech because it creates division. Many of those 25,000 falsehoods were also slanderous. They were intended to divide. And what's the price we pay? What's the cost of that? The third was to abstain from harsh speech, angry speech, hurtful, abusive, offensive speech. When we're talking about somebody else, and oh, they're so and so, they're such a lying, deceitful, etc. And again, they have they divide us from each other, and they create division between ourselves and the person that we're speaking to or we're speaking about. So abstaining from harsh speech. And then this is a kind of a catch-all, a very wide one, is to abstain from idle chatter. That can include a multitude, can cover a multitude of sins. It could be gossip, that's an obvious one, but it could be just filling the air with words, not talking unmindfully, unconsciously, saying things that don't need to be said. So these are the 4 kind of main admonitions of the Buddha around wise speech, what to avoid. And obviously the other side of these of unwise speech is what is wise speech, what is kind speech. And I want to talk about some of the Buddha's teachings about what is wise speech. And it's much broader than just saying what's true. You know, saying what's true is fundamental, but it's not just about what's true. You know, you might say something that's true, but it may be you're saying it at the wrong time, or it's the wrong person, or maybe it's something, even though it's true, it's not helpful to say it to somebody. You know, if you knew that a friend of yours was having a relationship with somebody, you know, and they weren't telling their partner about it, would it be wise speech to just feel like, oh, this is happening, therefore I need to tell this person about it? You know, that might be very unwise speech. You know, you may not be the person to say it. It might not be the right time. It might not be the right, you know, conditions to say it. So we need to bring in a lot more than just, is it kind of factually true? And that's an important part of it. So here are some of the things that the Buddha said. This is one sutta, one discourse of the Buddha, a very short one called the Vaka Sutta. The Buddha said, monks, a statement endowed with 5 factors is well spoken, not ill spoken. It is blameless and unfaulted by knowledgeable people. Which 5? So what are the 5 factors of wise speech or well-spoken speech? He says, it's spoken at the right time, it's spoken in truth, it's spoken affectionately, and it's spoken beneficially, and it's spoken with a mind of goodwill. So the right time, it's true, it's kind, it's helpful, and it's motivated by good intentions, kind intentions. I'll come back to these because sometimes the language is used is a little bit different. Sometimes it's talked about 4 qualities of wise speech. Sometimes 5, when you talk about the kind of more positive qualities of speech. And the Buddha had this to say about lying. He said, for the person who transgresses in one thing, I tell you, there's no evil deed that's not to be done. Which is this one thing? This, telling a deliberate lie, is the one thing to which, you know, somebody who does it, there's nothing that they won't do. He says, the person who lies, who transgresses in this one thing, there's no evil he or she might not do. So if you're capable of lying, the Buddha is saying, you're capable of any kind of evil. So it's a very, very strong admonition, you know, instruction not to lie, not to share things that are false. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a wonderful current day translator of the Buddha's teachings, he had this to say about Buddha's teachings on lying. He said, the Buddha's stricture against lying rests upon several reasons. For one thing, lying is disruptive to social cohesion. And this is really important. People can live together in society only in an atmosphere of mutual trust, where they have reason to believe that others will speak the truth. By destroying the grounds for trust and inducing mass suspicion, widespread lying becomes the harbinger, signaling the fall from social solidarity to chaos. So we need truth to even be able to live together in society. If we don't, we go from solidarity, from caring about each other, to chaos. he also goes on to say that lying is also important in our own individual lives, because if we tell lies, we feel compelled to lie again to defend our credibility. And he says, lies stretch, they multiply and connect until they lock us into a cage of falsehoods from which it's difficult to escape. I wanted to share a couple of other things about the, here we go. The Buddha also said that it's important to reflect on your speech before you speak, while you speak, and afterwards. You know, before you speak, to ask, will what I have to say, will it lead to affliction? Will it lead to harm for me, for others, or for both me and others? So before you speak, is this good? Is it helpful? And while you're speaking, is this helpful? Is it good, or does it lead to harm or affliction to myself, to others, or to both? And then afterwards to reflect, what I said, was it helpful, or did it lead to affliction? Did it lead to harm for myself, for others, and or for both? And in each of those cases, if it doesn't lead to harm, yes, we can continue with the speech. If it does lead to harm, and if we've already said it, the Buddha says, go and confess what you've done, to confess it to a teacher. Let them know, or let a wise friend know that you've carried out, that you've spoke in an unwise way, in an untrue way. And in future, exercise restraint. You know, avoid that speech in the future. And then, and if it isn't harmful, then yes, you can carry on and do it. So coming to kind of winding up, kind of bringing this together, what are the conditions or the criteria for skillful speech or wise speech, wise communication? I'll just name 5, the kind of coming, you know, bringing together the different aspects. The first, is it true? Is what I'm saying true? Obviously, it's wrong. We shouldn't lie. We shouldn't say what's false. Is it true? Second, is it kind? Is it kind? Does it come from kindness? Is it have a kind impact? Third, is it necessary? Do I need to say this? Or is it just filling up space? You know, is it necessary? Is it helpful? Does it actually help in this situation? Does it help this person? Does it help us both? Does it help us all? Is it helpful? This is a really important one. Is it intended to unify and bring harmony? Is it intended to unify and bring harmony? Or is it intended to divide? So only speak if it's intended to bring people together, bring us together, bring us collectively together. And is it timely? Is it the right time to do this? You know, something might be the right thing to say, but it might not be the right time to say it. You know, if we're angry, there might be something we want to share, but if we're so angry that we can't say it in a wise and kind way, then it's not the time to say it. Hold off and then wait till you're more balanced and more equanimity, and then say what needs to be said. So timeliness is also important. All of these elements are really important. All of these criteria are really important for our speech. And so we're living at a time where a whole way of living together, our social cohesion, our sense of our democracy itself, are being undermined. Again, I'm naming this, not saying it from a place of blame, but they're being undermined by the dishonesty and the divisiveness, the intending to divide, and the use of the dishonesty, the untruth, to divide us from each other. And the way I think of it, to use a metaphor, is once the genie is out of the bottle, it's really hard to get it back in. Once the genie of loss of trust in each other comes out of the bottle, it's very, very hard to restore that trust. And I want to name that because that's the time that we're living in right now, where the genie really is out of the bottle. And it's really going to be hard for us to get it back, to restore the trust that is being lost and has been lost, where people look at each other and say, I can't believe you because you voted X or you voted Y. I can't trust you. I can't trust you as a human being. So that's, I think, that's some statement of the truth that isn't just, I'm not saying it from self-interest or because I want you to believe it. You may have a different take on what I'm saying, but I'm intending to put it out there as a statement about the Buddha's teachings about truth and about what I'm seeing in our society and kind of maybe more broadly in our world as well, but particularly in American society right now. So I want to finish up with what is our role as practitioners of the Dharma, as followers in whatever way we define ourselves as practitioners of Dharma, of the Buddha's teachings and practices, or of mindfulness, however we define that. What is our role? I believe our role is to really follow and adhere to the truth, as really have a deep commitment to adhering to the truth in our own life, in our own speaking to each other, in our communications. And the truth in the broadest sense of not just saying what is, I saw this or I heard this. Yes, be true in that way, but also in these other ways of kind, uniting, timely, necessary, helpful, all of these other elements, as really a foundation for our practice and for our lives, for our way of living, and for a way of living together in society, in our world together, to really commit and reflect on truth. What do I need to do? How do I engage in this moment, in this situation, to keep coming back to what is true? What is accurate? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What can I name? And what is my intention when I share what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm understanding, what I'm experiencing? And can I share this from a place of kindness with the intention of unifying? So this was a somewhat longer talk today, and thank you kindly for bearing with me on this. I hope that this gives some food for thought, food for reflection. And I'd like to just invite us to move into a meditation. We'll have a meditation. Emily will then lead us in some movement. We can come back and do some sharing all together and then kind of finish up with a short meditation to finish our time together with some announcements. So kind of take some moments to find a posture, relaxed, comfortable and as at ease as you can be in this moment. Letting your back be straight, inviting the shoulders to relax. If you like to, let your eyes close and let your attention come inward. Then you might consciously drop down out of the thinking mode. A lot that I've shared, a lot maybe bubbling around in your mind, but let it drop down to your awareness into the body. Feel the contact with the seat or the surface beneath you. Feel the contact of your feet with the floor, your hands with your lap or your knees, whatever they're touching. Connect with the sensations of the body from the inside. Feel your feet from the inside. Maybe there's warmth, tingling, pulsing, pressure, whatever's here. Feel the sensations in your hands. Feel what they're touching. Feel the sensations of contact, warmth, coolness, hardness, softness. Feel the sensations of your body breathing, breathing in and breathing out. You might let your breath deepen and take a few longer, deeper breaths as a way of settling and relaxing. Filling the lungs, filling the chest on the in-breath and releasing, letting go on the out-breath. Breathing in and breathing out. If it's helpful, inviting a smile to your face to help relax the body and the mind. Thinking of a loved one or good friend, if that's helpful. Taking a moment to reflect on gratitude, on some things that you have that you appreciate in your life. To help you appreciate what you have. Come out of the mode of focusing on what you lack or what's wrong, what you need to change. And taking in any positive or pleasant feelings that come up. Meeting whatever you're experiencing right now with kindness, with acceptance. See if you can let your relationship with your experience as it is right now, see if you can let it be one of allowing, of welcoming and allowing whatever is present, letting it come, letting it be, and letting it go. We speak a lot about allowing in this practice. And what we really mean is just to let whatever is present, whatever's here as a result of earlier conditions, whether it's things that have happened or things we've done or habits of mind and body, that what is here right now comes from previous intentions and actions and thoughts. And what is here right now, in a sense, is is inevitable. It is what it is. It's here right now. And what we have some real impact on is how we meet what's here. So if we think of this allowing as the coming together of what is already arising with our way of meeting what's here. So see if you can meet whatever is here with this quality of allowing as much as you can. Allowing a feeling of tiredness or tension, just to be here, making space for it, meeting it with kindness. Not resisting anything that we're experiencing. Having that intention of not resisting, not judging, but allowing whatever bodily feelings are here to come and to go. Allowing whatever is going on in the mind to come and to go. Whatever emotions and mind states are here. Allowing your experience to come, to stay for a while, and then to pass when it's ready to pass. In Rumi's phrase, welcoming the guests. Whatever is here can be met with this attitude of allowing. Allowing. And even if what comes up is the opposite of allowing, a kind of resisting, a tightness, see if you can make space to allow the tightness to be here, to allow the tightness, the resistance. So it's as though we're kind of inviting a container of awareness that's large enough to include everything, to include whatever is coming up in the mind, in the body, in the heart, in our world, in our experience, allowing it all to come and go. Can we find peace in this moment just as it is? Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome, in Dorothy Hunt's words. Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Notice how it feels when you allow something that you might normally resist. Does it change anything? Does it open things up at all? Does it allow you to be with experiences that you might typically pull away from or avoid or resist? And this training of the mind and the heart to allow, to open, to meet wholeheartedly what's here. If it's helpful, using the breath as an anchor for your awareness, as a place to rest the attention and to come back to when the mind goes off into thought. When you notice the mind is off in thought, gently, kindly incline the attention back to the body, to the breath, to this moment. Each time we come back, we're training our mind to be here, to be present in a kind, non-judging way. Share a couple of short poems. This from Gregory Orr, Life, Dance, Alive. To be alive, not just the carcass, but the spark. That's crudely put, but if we're not supposed to dance, why all this music? If we're not supposed to dance, why all this music? And this from Rumi, Beliefs. There's nothing to believe. Only when I quit believing in myself did I come into this beauty. Day and night, I guarded the pearl of my soul. Now, in this ocean of purling currents, I've lost track of which was mine. There's nothing to believe. Only when I quit believing in myself did I come into this beauty. Day and night, I guarded the pearl of my soul. Now, in this ocean of purling currents, I've lost track of which was mine. Taking your time and in letting your awareness come back, opening your eyes, coming back into the collective, kind of seeing each other. And we'll move now into some movement led by Emily. Passing it to Emily.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Hugh. I invite everyone to take a moment to stand up and shift your weight from side to side. And then open up your arms and twist, just opening up to the space around you. Noticing how far you can go in one direction and then the other. And then slowly come down, back to mountain pose, feeling the firmness within your feet. Rise up. Turn your palms out and raising your arms, gather the energy of the sky, the sunshine, and the day-blind stars. And bring that energy to your heart. And then gather the energy of this group together, this community, our Sangha, with all of its kindness and compassion. And bring that energy to your heart. And then gather the energy of the earth, that which provides us with so much abundance, and bring that energy to your heart. And now, again, raise your arms up to stretch up, reaching up. And then allow your shoulders to come down away from your ears, grasping your wrist in your left hand. We'll be tilting to the left. Just allow yourself to tilt over, feeling as you breathe in, your rib cage on the right-hand side expand. Breathing here, exhaling and releasing here, and then inhale up. Switch hands. And we'll rise up, stretching up our left hand above our head. Exhale, shoulders come down from your ears. Inhale, and then tilt to your right. Tilting, breathing, and breathing into your left rib cage as your left arm extends to the right. And inhale up. Float your arms down. And then gather your hands at the back of your waist. And as you inhale, extend your arms away from each other and open the chest, lifting your head. And exhale, release. Inhale, extend out. And inhale, release. Inhale, extend. And release. Shake it out. Shake it in any way you wish. Your dance for the moment in space. And then place your hands above your knees, coming in to a forward fold. Breathing in and exhale, lower. Lower your torso and allowing your head to drop down, your arms drop down to where you're comfortable. You don't have to reach the floor. Wherever you are is right for you in this moment. And breathe here. This is an inversion with your head below your heart. Take a deep breath in. Exhale out. And then bring your hands back above your knees and roll up your spine. Then place your arms at heart center, and extend out to the sky. Extend to the community and to the earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. That's lovely, beautiful. So important to come into our bodies and connect with ourselves in that way. Thank you. What I invite you to do, just because of time today, is if you'd like to share anything in the chat box about what's present for you, what came up for you, if the talk brought things up for you, or if the meditation or the mindful movement brought things up for you, or anything you'd like to share, please feel free to share, and we'll do our sharing in that way today for time reasons, and next week I will make sure that we do have the opportunity to get into groups, because I know how valuable that is for all of us, just to kind of be able to put what we're experiencing into words and hearing others, and especially kind of seeing how much we're sharing all of this experience. Is not our own kind of purely individual lot, and emotions and mind states, etc. So inviting that for today, and let's take a short time to meditate together. Just a final shorter meditation now, maybe connecting with each other. So if you'd like to, again, just come into a comfortable, relaxed, seated posture, or whatever posture is good for you. If it's lying down or walking, what is all fine. Just whatever helps you to be here, to be present right now, to open wholeheartedly to your experience. Remembering just these preliminary practices that can be very helpful for us in settling and arriving. That we can always come back to the breath. We can take some deeper breaths if we're tense or tight, or just as a way of settling into being here. We can invite the smile as a way of relaxing the brain, the nervous system, settling, allowing ourselves to be more open, receptive. The practice of gratitude that helps us step out of the kind of the outer fixation that we're often caught up in, of dealing with things that we think are, quote, wrong, or that we need to change. And the power of just coming back to appreciate what we already have. Just all the things that life has given us, that others have given us, their kindness, their love, the beauty of nature, access to helpful and wise teachings and practices that can support us as we deal with difficulties and pain. Just taking in this emotion, taking in the appreciation, gratitude for what we already have. Again, coming back to this spirit, this attitude of allowing. so many different words that we can use that cover different aspects of this allowing, but it's non-judging. We're not judging our experience. We're not resisting. We're not holding on. We're accepting. We're welcoming. We're letting things be. So that allowing becomes a way of seeing and a way of being that helps free us. That's really why we're doing this. We're inviting this attitude, this spirit of allowing, because in doing this, we can untangle ourselves from the variety of different things we get tangled up in. The needs and the wants, and the likes and the dislikes, and the moving away from the unpleasantness and the grasping on to the pleasantness, and the worries and the fears. And rather than believing something about those experiences or identifying with them, we can simply bring a kind and caring attitude, allowing what's here to come and to go. So our role isn't to do anything about what's here so much as ride the waves of the experience. This is the spirit really of allowing. How would it be just to fully open to what is present for you right now? If it's pleasant, to let yourself allow yourself to experience the pleasantness, the good feelings. You know, if there's a pleasant feeling in the body, you could let it spread to other areas if it wants to do that. Just allowing any emotion or mind state to have a full expression. If there's a difficult feeling or emotion, sadness or grief, see how it is to just allow space for that, for the bodily feelings, for the movement of energy in the body, for the thoughts to come and go without kind of following them down every alleyway they go down, but just noticing, thinking, letting yourself open and allow what's here to come and to go. And in these final few minutes of the meditation and our time together, just feel your connection with everyone else who's here. Feel our shared intentions to be here, to be present, to wake up, to see things more clearly, to let go of clinging. All of us want to find freedom in our lives, and we find ourselves on a path together to wake up, to live more freely, and to support each other on our journey, on our journeys. You might send a wish of kindness out to others here, to everyone here. May you be safe, free from harm. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. You could let these wishes go out into the world, out into the troubled, divided society, just wishing for healing, that we might come together, that we might see beyond and through our differences and see the humanity and the goodness in each other. That we all have within us what the Quakers call that of God, what in the Buddhist tradition is sometimes called Buddha nature. You know, that goodness we have, each one of us. It may be covered over by lots of harmful thoughts and actions, but it's there nonetheless, this goodness, this humanity in each and every being, wishing for the well-being of all beings. May you be safe and free from harm. May you be happy. And may you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. And finishing this with this from Ellen Bass. It's called Phone Therapy. I was relief once for a doctor on vacation and got a call from a man on a windowsill. This was New York, a dozen stories up. He was going to kill himself, he said. I said everything I could think of. And when nothing worked, when the guy was still determined to slide out that window and smash his delicate skull on the indifferent sidewalk, do you think, I asked, you could just postpone it until Monday when Dr. Lewis gets back? The cord that connected us, strung under the dirty streets, the pizza parlors, taxis, women in sneakers carrying their high heels, drunks lying in piss. That thick coiled wire waited for the waves of sound. In the silence, I could feel the air slip in and out of his lungs, and the moment when the motion reversed, like a goldfish making the turn at the glass end of its tank. I matched my breath to his, slid into the water and swam with him. Okay, he agreed. May we all be held in kindness, in loving kindness, filled with loving kindness. So thank you everyone for this practice together, being together, your kind attention. Please feel free to share anything in the chat, any final words. We're going to finish with a couple of things, something we're doing this week for the first time. Before I get to that, I want to just mention one thing that's known to almost everybody, but if you're new to these classes, they're offered freely. There's not a charge for the class, but you're invited, if you are able and inclined, to make an offering of dana or generosity to the teacher, in this case me, to help me to continue teaching. And Pat will share in the chat the ways that you can do this. So appreciation for your support there.